People who cater to the super rich, what things have you seen? Used to do pool and spa maintenance in my 20s. I worked on one property with a mountainside, 10-bedroom/14 bath mansion, with a saltwater pool, tennis courts, guest mansion, and a servant's house that was 4-bedroom 5-bath. The property had so much more stuff, but that isn't the crazy thing. I worked on this property for 2 years, year-round, 5 days a week, and not a single person was ever there. The middle-aged, single woman that owned it lived in a city about 4 hours away and just didn't come to the property, because she was so busy with work. A multi-million-dollar compound, just empty. All the time. Finally, after 2 years, I got a call from my boss on my day off. He asked if I could go to the house to put some pool floats away. He apologized, because it was my day off, but said the owner would pay me $500 to go put them away. I was confused as to why there were even pool floats out anyway, because nobody was ever there, but I figured fuck it, $500 for 10 minutes. I show up to the house and the woman's adult children were staying at the house with about 10 plus kids between them all, and they were having a massive pool party/cookout. I awkwardly walked up and said to one of the parents, "Sorry, it must have been a mistake, but I was told to come put pool floats away, but you're obviously here so I'll leave." Presumably the woman's adult son said, "Oh, no, we're getting ready to leave. You can take them." Then he instructed the kids to push them towards me. I literally grabbed one inner tube float and 4 pool noodles, brought them 10 feet into the pool house, and put them away. I, confusedly, said they were all set and went to leave. The son thanked me and handed me a folded mass of $20 bills. It was $400. I was expecting $500 from my boss for payment, but I figured $400 cash was still overpayment, so I didn't mention it. The next day at work, my boss gave me $1,000. I told him the son had already paid me $400, which was fine. He said the son told the woman how great a job I did, so she wanted to pay me $1,000 instead of $500 and the $400 was a tip from her son. For 10 minutes of work. She actually called my boss the next day to ask if she should reimburse me for gas, since it was 15 minutes from my house. I told him that I was all set. I tutored a wealthy 5-year-old. I got paid good money to spend an hour drawing and coloring and playing with this kindergartner, but all in French. He had been to more places in the world by 5 than I'll ever go to in my whole lifetime probably. The best part of the job were the perks, though. They would take me and my so out to dinner at fancy restaurants and pay the bill no matter what it was. They would invite us over to eat some delicacy they prepared. Wife was Chinese/Vietnamese, husband was Indian, and they'd always have some house guests staying with some crazy resume. For example, one time they had a diplomat for the Netherlands there to do business. They had houses in my city and in San Francisco and would fly there all the time. They invited me on several occasions, but I never had time to go. I also befriended and stayed with the daughter of Russian oligarchs who lived in Paris. The mom was a famous writer and the dad did something in business. Their grandfather was a famous Soviet writer, and so in general they lived a very cultured life. They lived in the richest part of Paris called Neuilly-sur-Seine and had houses in the Alps, Crimea, and Moscow. The crazy part, or rather sad part, was that she only had a few options for a career. She could be a doctor, a lawyer, or a businesswoman. Their son was lucky enough to study at the Geneva Conservatory, but that was only because he was really talented. In this family, if you didn't have a natural artistic talent, you only had those 3 career prospects to choose from. I had the impression that she was rather depressed about how limited her options were and how much pressure was put on her to succeed. I did IT work for a tiny little private company like the owner, his brother, and me. Guy called because his new PC wouldn't turn on and it's like 3 p.m. He was 100% willing to pay for me to drive 5 hours one way to get it working today because he wanted to play games today. Okay, so 5-hour road trip one way and the address is this huge fucking mansion. 100% thought I was in the wrong place. Use the intercom at the gate and nope, this is the place. Guy and his wife are really cool and the dude had built his own gaming rig. It was absolutely over the top. I had never even laid eyes on hardware that expensive before. He never turned the power switch on his PSU on. He paid the base rate of $1,400 for me to come out there to flip a switch. I also installed his graphic drivers, but that was technically free, and then gave me $5,000 cash as a tip, all because he was excited to play League of Legends on his new PC. Edit. Thank you all for the awards. When rich people want to buy a Jaguar in the UK, they get assigned a special salesperson who is incredibly knowledgeable. They meet in a special fancy office, and special arrangements can be made. This was my friend Chris' job. He had access to things that a normal Jaguar salesperson wouldn't have. Like he could ring up the manager of the factory for special requests level of access. Well, a Saudi prince wanted to buy this new Jaguar that had been released, so they met up and spent a full day specing the Jaguar out. I believe the final price was something like 125k for the vehicle. Then came the decision for color. At the time the factory had 16 different color choices for this model. The prince asked if he could sleep on it as it was getting late and almost time for dinner/prayer. My friend Chris says of course, and they set a time to meet the new morning. The next morning the Saudi price is like, I figured out an acceptable solution to my color dilemma, to which Chris goes, and what would that be? The Saudi prince goes, I'll order one of each color. And my friend Chris is like, oh well, of course. They quote delivery time. Saudi prince was fine and asked for his options and was presented with ocean travel options, to which the prince said, what about air cargo? Chris, thinking maybe they'd do 1 or 2 by air cargo and the rest by boat. The prince was like, no, I want all 16 vehicles loaded on a plane, and flown to Saudi Arabia. So that's the story on how 16 of the same Jaguar with different colors ended up being flown to Saudi Arabia. All in, the total cost was around 2.5 million. I worked for UPS for a hot minute as a driver helper and got to see some interesting things. The one driver had the rich of the rich route, the mansions worth tens of millions around the Ann Arbor, MI area. The Ford mansion, Lloyd Carr, the one recent guy for Michigan football that I'm forgetting that also worked for Little Caesars. Edit, the name I was forgetting was Dave Brandon. Anyway, I got to see Dave Brandon's mansion. It was gated, deep in the woods, and absolutely huge. The driver, a 33-year UPS veteran, told me these guys with these huge mansions like this, they don't live there by themselves. Sometimes don't live there at all. They move their entire extended families in there. Parents, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, cousins, etc. And they all live off the rich guy's dime, ordering whatever they want whenever they feel like it. I think we delivered 30 or 40 packages there that one day. Second story from the same day and with the same driver, we delivered to a smaller, but still huge, house with an extremely long and wooded driveway. The driver was cursing about how much he hated these people because they always parked this huge ass boat in the only possible turnaround point in the driveway. So he goes in backwards and floors it. Maybe 40 miles per hour backwards, about 250 yards of bends, straights, and he drove it absolutely perfectly, never driving off or missing the driveway. We get to the house and he needed a signature. He handed me the package and said he'll get the signature and just hand them the package and we'll go. Well, we get to the door, and this maybe late 40s or early 50s man, kind of a Rick Moranis/George Costanza type of build. Short, extremely thick glasses, balding, but very skinny build. He's standing in the front door with a lab-looking dog on a leash. The driver says, "Good evening, we just need a signature and we'll be on our way." I used to install DirecTV in wealthy areas of an East Coast city in the US. While I try to give customers options on where I install the satellite dish, I have to get a good line of sight for it to work properly, so sometimes the location options were limited. One rich lady's house, gorgeous house right on the beach, I only found 2 good spots for the dish. It could either be on a pole in the middle of her backyard, or on the corner of the roof. She definitely did not want it in the middle of her yard. Only problem was that she had a metal roof and we use specific mounting hardware for that. We happened to be backordered on that hardware for a few weeks out. When I informed her of this, she got visibly upset that she'd have to wait that long to get her cable up and going. I apologized many times and told her she'd need to reschedule a few weeks later and I leave. 3 days later I'm looking over my work orders for the day and I notice her name and address. I'm like, wow, I bet she thinks she's getting a different installer who she can try to convince to give her a different answer. I was wrong. I pull up to the house, brand new shingle roof. I did the install on the roof. As a chauffeur and ski companion for a mega rich guy's daughter, he sent me out to buy her a birthday present for when she turned 17, I think it was. This was way back in the 70s, so I got her a new BMW 2002, and told the dealer to charge it to the guy. Which was cool, and later the dealer offered me an absolute deal on a trade-in that was the usual cream puff only driven to church on Sundays. $500 for a really good late model used car, but an American car they never dealt in. Much later on, 30 years later, I was working with an architect building a home for another mega rich guy and the library was to be paneled in knotty pine. Guy's wife arrived when it was almost completely trimmed out and says, "Too many knots." So we ripped out the whole interior and the guy, who owned several sawmills, sent back to the mill to ship another truckload so we could select the boards under the wife's direction. And same wife, same building, could not figure out how to turn the car around in the triple wide driveway, so he had a turntable installed in the garage so all she had to do was miss the edges of the door on the way in or out. I started working for this couple's company, and managed to be accepted by their 2 Irish wolfhound dogs, which the owner said had never happened before with anyone but him and his partner. As a result, they hired me to come over after work to brush, walk, medicate, and feed the dogs, as well as come over, and take one of their high-end spare cars to pick up bulk orders of diced mutton, we're talking 100 kilograms plus at a time, from a butcher they liked on the other side of town. They gave me the keys to their heritage-listed home in a posh area while they were away, so I could take care of the dogs and sleep over if I wanted. They were both absolutely lovely people, dollar rich, but time poor, and always treated me with great respect and friendliness. They bought a brand new Toyota Troop Carrier, for the dogs to travel in, as 2 wolfhounds would not fit in his Porsche or her Mercedes. I'd load the dogs into the Troopy, and we'd go to a fairly local beach so the dogs could run and play to their heart's content once a month, splashing around in the sea. Then I'd bring them home, happy and tired, wash them, feed them, tuck them in for the night, and return to my own home. The dogs slept on a huge, fantastically expensive leather sofa on the back deck, that had been replaced with a newer, smaller version inside the house. I have worked for some of the richest people in Maryland, and the one thing that stands out more than others is this doctor I worked for in Montgomery County. It's one of the most affluent zip codes in America. Anyway, this guy owned a shitload of offices around the DC area, tons of employees and associate doctors, etc. Guy was seriously loaded. Huge garage full of super expensive cars like multiple Ferraris, art collection, wine cellar, the works. I used to do IT work for his medical practice and manage all the servers and stuff, and occasionally went to their house because I was the lead admin. I once was working in his house and was walking around upstairs where the bedrooms were. I shit you not, this guy was laying in bed being fed by an assistant. Like he was literally laying in bed while someone hand-fed him, and not like grapes but a regular meal. It was fucking weird as shit. Imagine someone feeding you a full meal like a steak and spoons of soup, salad, etc., and you never used your hands. It was like an adult being fed like a baby. It seemed like Saddam Hussein type shit. I've never seen anything like that before, and that was what popped into my mind, like a dictator or something who demands to be treated like a literal king. A cousin works at, let's just say, a higher-end, worldwide known hotel chain, and he works at one in a large US city. Couple years back, a random guy came up to him and asked him for a dinner suggestion and says price isn't a concern. My cousin keeps up with what's trendy in the city, knows some owners and such, and gave the guy a suggestion. Next day the guy asked for him by name, gave him $100 and said dinner was amazing, now where should we eat tonight? Another suggestion, and the next day, another $100. Only this time, his manager saw this goes down, and then a few minutes later, do you know who that is? Nope. I won't say the name, but let's just say old money and probably in the hundreds of millions net worth. Cool story, huh? Well, a couple months later my cousin went to work one day and was told this person would be calling at 6 p.m, and only wanted to speak to my cousin. The conversation was short, basically we're in town next month for 4 nights, book the 6 of us for wonderful dinners, we trust your opinion. He was given an email for basically their family assistant, and to let that person know the plans. The family arrived, said hi to him as they checked in, and said they were looking forward to their dinners, and 4 days later upon checking out handed him $1,000 for his wonderful local knowledge. Or something like that. My niece married to an absurdly rich guy. His quirk, he did absolutely everything possible to hide his fortune. Simple clothes, normal car, decent but not lavish house, self-allowance. Guy literally hates his fellow multimillionaires in the guts. He told a story when he was really into Formula 1, his dad bought him a karting track. Long story short, the guy got really good and won several small championships, earning a spot in a training camp with some of the current Formula 1 pros. As soon as they realized he came from money, the would-be trainers, other kids, and pretty much everyone started treating him differently, basically saying he is not good enough and that he will be paid for to become a F1 pilot. That story repeated itself many times over from Oxford University, where the guy went to learn, earning a scholarship not by simply paying, to pretty much every business deal where people were trying to get way more simply cause he's filthy rich and can afford it. Gold diggers who were ready to satisfy every adult dream of his only to get into the money, etc. etc. Instead of becoming a cynical asshole version of Scrooge, he and his family just hid that they have wealth. They wanted normal lives and honest human interactions. I once worked at one of the largest private clubs in the world, in one of the little boutiques. In addition to clothes, we also had a small selection of things you'd find at a convenience store, snacks, magazines, and newspapers. For some reason these mega-rich, high society people loved buying the magazines, and were kind of fixated on them, people, us, cosmopolitan, etc., but they all acted like it was below them. Like it was trashy and frowned upon to look at them. The men would come in and grab their newspapers, buy a magazine and hide it inside the newspaper so no one else at the club knew they bought it. The women would come in and buy multiple, asking if we had newest editions yet, and then hide them in their purses. One of them, who was a Golden Globe awarded actress, got a magazine with something about The Bachelor on the cover. I said to her, "OMG, I love that show, do you watch it?" This was before I knew it was taboo. Also, don't come at me, I love me some reality shows, and she got super weird, like all embarrassed. She looked around making sure no one heard me say it and was all paranoid. She was pretty friendly with me up until that point, and afterward wouldn't really make small talk with me anymore. I wish I could have said to all those people, don't you realize you all buy these magazines? That's why we keep them in stock. Just admit you all buy them and stop acting like prudes. Like what? Just weird. One of my few jobs is cleaning. It's interesting how frugal the super wealthy are compared to the just pretty wealthy people. There is a very nice Safa couple I clean for who have an amazing house that always smells great and doesn't really need regular cleaning, it's always just so nice. Besides some lovely accessories, they don't really have anything particularly spectacular. Just a well-decorated modern home, nice alcohol, business casual and a nice attitude. Most of our, probably, very wealthy clients are like this. Meanwhile we also clean for some rather reckless clients. They are wealthy but don't have fuck you money. Their houses are usually messy and they are usually not that pleasant to us either. Nice cars, designer bags, and glasses. Houses look great from outside but inside looks like the A-bomb was dropped. Once had a client open a package that was delivered, I think it was a watch but it was in a big box so it was hard to tell what it was. She said it's a present for my hubby, probably your monthly salary, right? She didn't even say it with malice, she just said it casually. Like, had she have said something else in the same tone it would have seemed pleasant. It's like they don't acknowledge that you're human. The worst bit is, whatever it was probably worth more than my monthly salary. But she doesn't get 50% off DC shoes so she can suck on those apples.